Today's new budget forecast projecting an additional surplus of over $1 billion during the current biennium is great news for Minnesota. The principal reason for this dramatic improvement is the stronger than expected growth of our state's economy. That credit belongs first and foremost to the people of Minnesota, to the businessmen and women who reaffirmed their commitment to our state by expanding their businesses and adding 122,000 jobs here during the past 3 years, and to their hardworking employees who made those business expansions successful. Credit is also due to the legislature and my administration for setting a course of fiscal responsibility and sticking to it. In 2011, Republican legislative leaders and I made permanent reductions in state spending of $2 billion. Last spring, the new DFL legislative leaders and I continued those spending cuts, raised new revenues, primarily from our state's wealthiest citizens and largest corporations, and invested most of that in education, from early childhood to all-day kindergarten to college tuition freezes. Critics claim that this balanced fiscal approach would have a chilling effect on Minnesota's economy. Today's forecast proves those critics wrong. In fact, it'll be interesting to watch some of the people who were criticizing Minnesota's economy yesterday trying to claim credit for it today. We've used our strong economic growth to pay back all of the $2.8 billion previously borrowed from our schools. Thanks to the insistence of the DFL majority in the House of Representatives, today's forecast will trigger the immediate repayment of the final $246 million we owe our schools. It will also permit the elimination of yet another leftover gimmick, $15 million owed to the Airports Fund, which will leave $825 million remaining from the $1.086 billion forecasted balance. This news will no doubt launch a blizzard of legislative proposals to reduce taxes and increase expenditures. I point out that there will be another budget forecast in just 3 months, which will update today's projections. I will await that forecast before I submit my final proposed budget revisions to the legislature. If this forecast holds, however, I expect to propose the elimination of all 3 business-to-business sales taxes, effective April 1st, 2014, at a cost of $231 million for the rest of the biennium. My other priority is a tax cut for middle-income Minnesotans by, for example, conforming to all the federal tax cuts, which would cost about $205 million for this biennium. That would include eliminating the marriage penalty, which would reduce state taxes for some 640,000 Minnesota taxpayers. It would also include increasing the working family credit, which would lower state taxes for about 53,000 taxpayers. These 2 tax cut packages combined would total $436.4 million, which would still leave $338.6 million for other purposes. I do not expect to make other specific proposals until after next February's forecast. I'd be glad to respond to questions. Okay.
Your was counseling caution by all sides and even suggested that maybe the reserve should be the place that some of this money should ultimately go. Do you feel like the reserves need to be pumped up?
We kid Commissioner Scholler that his middle name is Reserve. all arrows lead to the reserve fund. I mean, as I said, there are going to be a plethora of proposals to cut taxes and increase spending and add to the reserve, and each one of them has his proponents. I think we should wait and see after the next forecast what we're really dealing with, and then people will certainly prior to that make their own views known, but that's part of the process.
Do you think this is going to make the upcoming legislative session more dicey than previously thought?
Well, I think there's going to be it's certainly going to whet the appetites of most of the people who spend their time here or in the Centennial Building, as the case may be. But, you know, it's certainly a better problem to have than the alternative, so consider that a blessing, and, you know, that's the nature of the process, is to see, you know, what the people's priorities are, and then to reflect that into legislative changes. This is why, you know, we moved to every year sessions some time ago, because the magnitude of these shifts are a lot of money, and so it's one of the reasons that we're well served by having an annual legislative session. And I can't believe I'm saying that after just a couple of months ago, but it's true.
Governor, how does this change affect your thinking about a bonding bill, its size and its direction?
Well, very good question. The balance in the bonding debt fund is about $28 million, and we also have a debt capacity ceiling. And I'm told, just preliminarily by MMB this morning, that they think that the combination of having that additional debt reserve money or unspent money and the debt capacity would allow an additional up to say $200 million of bonding above the $775 million that's now in the budget. And I've already experienced looking at, we have over $2.4 billion of bonding requests from around the state, starting with the capital renovation here and projects all over Minnesota. And I'd say 90% of them are very good projects and much needed projects. Down in Winona yesterday, the Winona State has a couple of really important projects. Minskew has $130 million in just the basic repair and maintenance fund. And the city of Winona has other projects that they need to continue to lower their unemployment rate, which is now 3.8%, with about half dozen companies they mentioned who are looking to expand and create still more jobs in that region of the state. So we want to be able to support these infrastructure improvements for cities to encourage their further economic growth, and we want to be able to make our education systems state-of-the-art and competitive, so our workforce is competitive with anyone else's. And then we want to renovate this building, and another part of the roof in the governor's residence just fell in the other day, and some people might think that's a reason to delay any further repairs there, and I hope that might have broader consequences. But you know, there's a lot more that's going to need to be done, and I think you could totally justify being done, and we're going to have the capacity to do so. So if we can, within the area, level of fiscal restraint that's defined by the legislature in terms of the debt limit, debt service expenditures and the overall limit, then I'll certainly look at that. I haven't made any final decisions.
You fought hard for what you're calling a balanced approach to this budget, including those controversial tax hikes on the wealthiest Minnesotans. Today you say this forecast proves your critics wrong. Why do you say that, and isn't it too early?
Well, I'm crediting the legislature that preceded this one, the one that acted in 2011 and 12. I think my comments reflect that, and the ones now. I mean, some people suggested that we were going to see a giant, vacuum caused by all the businesses and jobs leaving the state, and that just isn't happening. And thank goodness it's not. Some people have seen some of the comments made already. Some people are, obviously very distraught that our state is doing so well economically because it doesn't fit with their economic or their political views. In fact, I've been saying all along, this confirms a Minnesota model for economic success, a balanced approach. We're not the lowest tax state. We don't strive to be. And we haven't under Republican governors or Democratic governors, but we're a high-value state. And by putting money into education, we have a well-educated workforce. We look at high-value manufacturing, and we're increasing there. We look at the kind of investments we're making for Destination Medical Center and 3M's research and development expansion and other projects like that are going to create more jobs in the future. the balanced approach has been one that's proven successful for Minnesota for decades now, and we're continuing in that on that path. And I think the results: 122,000 people, more people working than were when I took office, and the fact that we're the fifth fastest growing state economy in the country, and other objective measures just show that that kind of fear mongering and naysaying about Minnesota, which has been unfortunately the norm in some parts of our system in the state, simply are once again being defied by the facts. And I credit that again. I go back to Minnesota business leaders, owners, men and women who, despite whatever the tax consequences were, have faith in this state, and know that their businesses can be successful and profitable here, and are making further investments as we speak. And I'm grateful to them for that, and I'm grateful to the hardworking Minnesota citizens who show by using their talents, their education, their good Minnesota character, that they are going to make these investments successful now and in the future. And so I think this is a day to celebrate that success in Minnesota. The surplus that is being now forecasted for this biennium, I mean, the tax changes that were incorporated last spring were factored into the forecast that provides the base for this comparison. So they're the same tax assumptions in the last February's forecast as there are in this November forecast. It's not about having raised or lowered taxes one way or the other. It's about the fact there are more people working. There are more people paying taxes. There are more people who are earning higher incomes, so they're paying more in taxes. And that's what the system was intended to do, and that's what's generating these surplus, and has been consistently for the last 2.5 years.
President, you give us some ideas what your tax priorities are with this additional funding, but you didn't talk about what your priorities might be for that additional $338 million. And just generally give us some.
Well, I'm going to strive to model the fiscal restraint that I'm going to recommend to everyone, and not spend up to the projected amount or more than that, because first of all, as I said, that number is likely to change. And the first time I was in this situation, in February forecast of 2011 was $1 billion different from the forecast of November of 2010. So I'm aware that these numbers can change considerably. And one of the reasons we got into, maybe the primary reason we got into the fiscal mess that we're just gotten ourselves out of, is because there were excessive fiscal promises made on both the tax and spending side to various previous years that then were not matched by the subsequent fiscal realities. So I think we got to avoid that, falling back into that trap of over-promising on what we can actually deliver until we know what we actually can do.
Anybody else? Great.
He's really
What part of the roof fell?
He's just on probation.
Governor, what fell at the mansion? What part of the roof fell?
Is that down the same area where the roof fell a year and a half ago, which prompted the revision, remodeling this, or repairs that are going on. So it's down on the the west wing, which fortunately I don't use. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your political persuasion. But it has raised the question whether the rest of the roof might follow its footsteps. I was told the roof, and then the bedrooms on the second floor. I have not been there to see it, and it's all under repair now anyway. But the Mrs. Palenti's mother stayed in what they called the green room at the far end, and when she was taking care of their daughters, and that room was obliterated a year and a half ago. The roof caved in and the ceiling then collapsed, and anybody who had been sleeping in that room would have been killed. So it's, it's potentially a serious matter, and at least serious when you're living there. And so we haven't totaled up they haven't totaled it up. It just happened 2 nights ago. So, but just a minor illustration of what happens when you don't make the repairs on a timely basis. They become more extensive and more expensive later on.
This was falling in and leaking when Rudy was governor.
Yeah, no, I don't know if these are the same leaks, or they at least not hoses and buckets. At least I haven't seen it yet. But yeah, it's anyway. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Next round here.